This is the basement studio at my sister's house. Going over a song that I had just written and started practicing on guitar. It's called The Purpose.
When I was just a baby, before I knew your name, you came and whispered in my ear, and my life ain't been the same.
In some ways, that's where things started, but also not. As I look back through family photos, I came across a picture of my Aunt Janet, and she was a member of a vocal group. And I remember, growing up, that in the apartment that we lived in East St. Louis, there would always be music. Now, my aunt and my mother lived together when I was a kid. And so in our apartment, it was Mama, Aunt Janet, my sister Sheila, Vanita, Beverly. Lisa lived in St. Louis at the time, myself, and my nephew Lonnie. And so Aunt Janet being a singer and both her and Mama being heavily into church, there would always be some kind of music playing in the background. And I really think that's where, I became indoctrinated. That's how I became indoctrinated. I was the youngest. I was born in 1967, and so pretty much everything just ran downhill towards me. So whatever they didn't want, I got in terms of, talent or activities. I was always around to see it. And in the projects, you have the benefit of being around so many people. We lived on the 6th floor, the E4 building, apartment 614. And so it was an entire community just surrounding us, Everybody that you had been basically born around, everybody that you went to school with, probably from Head Start all the way up to high school, lived within a few blocks of you. And so that little area of the city was my life. My nephew Lonnie was definitely my first playmate, and I would say that, he was really more like a brother. And I'm sure that, with all the fighting and stuff that we did as kids, we did have some fun times. And I would say this was probably somebody's first attempt at turning us into a music group. Now, I was really never into music or anything like that as a kid. We listened to it and it was a part of the atmosphere, but I didn't have any aspirations to be a musician. There was nobody in my family that I knew of that played music. So for some reason or another, I got into art and I got into writing, and that followed me for quite a while. And I would have to say that it wasn't until years after that I even decided to get into songwriting. In high school, I performed because I could kind of sing, I could kind of sing and dance. And there was homecoming for my senior year, and Robin Boyd and I decided that we were going to pair up and do a duet with You I'm Born Again by Billy Preston and Saria. And we landed a decent performance, but we did not win. On to college, and I still thought I could sing. And that was until I was asked to do a performance for our Black History Month program, and I had to sing the Black History Month opening song, the Lift Every Voice, with Marlo. Don't remember Marlo's last name, but I do recall that she was from the Chicago area. And man, could she sing. So after that, I decided that the best thing for me was to focus on art. And I dove heavily into art, photography being the thing for me. And went on to graduate with a degree in fine art and plan to live out my life as a practicing photographer, maybe for some big magazine. Who knows? What I didn't know at the time, though, was that magazine jobs for people with the degree of training that I had were very scarce. And so after college, I really did a lot of street photography, worked a lot of odds and ends jobs, retail sales, pretty much whatever I could do just to pass the time and make a little bit of money. Needless to say that initially I felt college was a disappointment because it didn't set me up for the dreams that I had hoped to live with my life. And then I landed a job as a graphic designer for May Merchandising Company, and then eventually became an art director for May Merchandising Company. And that job allowed me to travel and really do some photos and just begin to see the country and just explore what it meant to be a creative in a creative space. And it also exposed me to other people in creative disciplines, copywriters, layout artists, technicians, buyers, things like that, people that work behind the scenes. Not long after, my first daughter was born, and I was pretty much settled into what I thought was the corporate life, not the dream that I thought I would pursue as a visual artist or musician. Hadn't even crossed my mind at the time. Definitely not songwriter. A couple years later, my youngest daughter was born, and I was locked into family life, so I thought. The art direction skills, I say, that I've been given had allowed me to launch a magazine called The Industry. It was the first music magazine, color music magazine in the region, and that opened up some doors. It really did. We got behind the scenes interviews, we got backstage passes, we got access to artists, we got access to radio stations. We were able to put on concerts. It was just a whole nother world that I had not even imagined being able to be exposed to just by being a writer. And so that lasted for a little bit, and then it fell apart as well. And I think that's really when I began to focus on what the possibilities were for me of becoming a songwriter. I began looking through my songbook, and one of the songs that I had written was a song called Insanity. And I decided that I was gonna, buy a cheap video camera and produce a video and a song. And I did that, and it was okay. It was a good song. But then I decided to expand, and I decided, hey, what about all these other things that I've written? Why won't I, or why can't I get other people to sing these songs? So my adventure into songwriting began, and I began recruiting other people to sing the songs that I'd written. So I had a studio in partnership with a couple of guys at a mall, and when we weren't doing photography or videography, we'd practice. And the things that we practiced, we eventually took into the recording studio, and some of it came out okay, and some of it not so much. We had fun. We made a little progress. In retrospect, we made more progress than I thought. We made music videos, and I kept so many of the recordings that never really turned out the greatest because at the time I really didn't have any technical training. I could not get musicians to write music for me because they were all busy writing for themselves. Any technician would have to be paid top dollar because, again, the music industry had cracked open at that point. So nobody was willing to work for free, so I had to teach myself music. I began taking guitar lessons and drum lessons and trying to learn anything that I could on the internet just to be able to compose the songs or the music for the songs that I had written. And so I bought some rudimentary equipment and began just kind of eking things out enough to get a decent song out. And that's really where it all began. So a lot of the stuff that I probably could have done much better back then wasn't done to the best of its capability because I had gotten into the game so late and I really couldn't get the help that I needed from seasoned musicians. One of the transitions in my career, I would say, came about when I got a job as a cruise sales and marketing rep. So I worked for a company, and this company would charter ships to do music cruises. And on those cruises, I got to meet a lot of industry insiders, a lot of musicians. I got a chance to have a lot of conversations, see how things work backstage, just kind of get an inside look at the industry. And that really helped reignite my passion for music, the passion that I didn't even know was there. And so just kind of seeing the glitz and the glamour, I guess you could say I got seduced by it a little bit, but the seed had, again, been planted a long, long time ago by my aunt. So now, after that job, I'm ready to get back to it. I think I've got the formula. I put my group back together now under the new name 45 Fano, and we began to record with the new insight, with the new experiences, with the new knowledge that I have, the new outlook on life. And we made some progress. We really did. The team had pared down just because life was lifing and everybody went their own ways, but there were some key players that stuck around and was able to get some things done. And again, just using the basement studio at my sister's house that I put together, I was able to do some real serious stuff. Fast forward a bit, ran into another group of guys who had formed a music co-op. And they seemed like a pretty serious bunch at the time. And, we had all, I guess, put our souls out there and said how much we really wanted to dedicate the rest of our lives to getting into the music industry. And so we made a pact to spend time together and rehearse songs and practice and just really put it together, because again, after everything had been happening around the area, we felt as if we had a decent shot. We were all confident in what we did and we all had experience, and so why not us? Why couldn't this be our time? And so we made a go of it for a bit, and we got into the studio to record, and things just kind of went a little flat from there. We maintained friendships, but we didn't maintain the musical bond that we needed to have to really produce music. So, back to the studio I went with my own projects and my own group. Again, accumulating the knowledge and just bringing it along, the things that I had learned from others, and just kind of hoping to put something real together. The music was never really far from anything that I was doing. With all the jobs that I worked, it was always on my mind in the background somewhere, and I was always, I guess, looking for an opportunity to make something happen with the music. And so when opportunities presented themselves, took those opportunities. In life, you have setbacks, and that's definitely the case. There were some major setbacks for me. In 2016, my sister passed away from a battle with cancer, breast cancer. A couple of years later, my aunt passed away from congestive heart failure. In between, a couple of failed relationships. And I really didn't want to do music or anything creative anymore. It was just kind of dead for me. My passion for a lot of stuff died. But I was able to find it again in music, not through the creation side of things, but the entertainment side of things. I took a job as a DJ for a wedding production company, and seeing other people dance and celebrate to different forms of music brought the music back alive in me, and it allowed me to just find a way to celebrate the wins in life that I had, and also to see the losses in a different way, to put those feelings, those emotions, those experiences into words that I could share with others, to turn those words into songs, to translate those songs into things that people might want to play, songs that they may want to play in celebration of their own life experiences, to mark the different milestones. It wasn't easy. It was a long road, I would say, but it was definitely necessary, I would say, in my creative development to go through the things that I went through. At some point, I had taken a job with the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice as a case manager. And again, another setback, things happened. There was the near death of a family member by a random act of violence, I would say. And this was just after I had started a music program for the incarcerated kids. It was called Heartbeats, and it was a rehabilitative program that was designed to teach them how to express themselves through songwriting, and avoid the violent conflicts that they had been getting into in the negative situations, to use reason and express emotions with words instead of with weapons and, with fists and other items. And from there, I decided to take a job in the field of education. Back in East St. Louis, back in my old hometown where I grew up, really where it all started for me, in hopes of helping some of the kids that looked like me and that I could relate to avoid some of the consequences of the kids that I've been working with juvenile justice. And so, things happen again. We get pushed back inside for different reasons. And pushed back in this time at being hostage to the pandemic. The world was pretty much shut down for a couple of years, it seems. And in that time, I had to get back in touch with myself in many different ways. Back in touch with my artwork, back in touch with my writing. And I think that made a huge difference in what I was able to do afterwards. I came out of the pandemic with a songbook. All the songs that I had been writing, scribbling down on the sheets of paper for all the years, riding downtown on the Metro Link, back and forth to work. I was able to formally put that material into a songbook. using all the skills that I learned in design and layout, photography. I put together a book of songs with 100 items in it, and I was really, really proud of it. Really proud of it. And so it's definitely something positive that came out of something negative. And hey, I look back on the pandemic as one of the worst and best things that has happened in my life so far. There was so much tragedy, but I also gained from it.